everybody. Today on The Inside Story, I'm joined by Adam Richardson, author of Orbs and the Attack of the Hair Spiders. Good morning, Adam. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you, Taryn. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. It's a bit of a miserable day, but it's all right. It's not bad.
Yeah, we can't complain here, can we?
Well, yeah, we can. And we do, because we're British. So, how have you been during lockdown?
Not too bad. I think, obviously, everyone would agree it's been interesting the last year. And I think most have been trying to make the best of it, myself included. So I've worked relentlessly, I will say. I don't think I've ever been busier throughout the entire period. So from, that initial lockdown throughout. And obviously, we've had 2 children to try and homeschool. Obviously, the writing, trying to continue with all that as well in the background. So it's been a good old mix and a bit of a juggling act, to be fair. So.
You've actually been travelling throughout lockdown, haven't you?
Yeah, strangely enough, my job, the 9 to 5, it basically entails travelling to different countries, which is very nice. I guess I do class it as a perk. But strangely enough, these little windows of opportunity kept kind of cropping up between, say, lockdown 1 and 2, and we'd have a flurry of travel to. It was mainly around Europe, but if it wasn't the London office, it'd be France and Cyprus and Netherlands and places like that. So I've managed to get a little bit of travel in. Avoided just being barred entry back into the country on one occasion, but no, thankfully I managed to get out because other than that, the day job is pretty much stuck in where I am now. As you can see, this little box room, which was my former writing room, it's kind of been took over a bit at the minute. So
have you noticed much of a difference in attitudes while you've been travelling, or has it all been kind of similar to the UK?
It's an interesting one. I mean, without wanting to, generally, people have the masks on. It did vary from country to country. So certainly, it was, everyone was, adhering to the rules, let's say down in London, but then I'd travel to France in the early days and very few people wore masks and it seemed just like normal. So it was quite strange, the differences. But more recently, obviously with, it becoming more, I suppose, globally renowned and, it's spreading like wildfire and these different kind of variants coming out. There has been certainly not just myself, but some of my colleagues as well have been kind of almost subject to much stricter and stringent like routines. So I had one colleague and basically, he was, they were almost being patrolled, into the different countries by the army, thrust onto buses and taken to areas to, be double checked that they'd had all their vaccines and whatever else they needed, so yeah, it's certainly been interesting, but I'm hoping, as I'm sure everyone else watching this is, that we're coming out the back of that now. So yeah, we'll see how it pans out.
Well, that leads me nicely into the fact that even though you've been having a bit of a jaunt, so we got Orbs and the Attack of the Hair Spiders. That's been out now 2 years.
Probably getting on for it'll be, is it August this year? It'll be up for 2 years, I think. Yeah.
So, obviously you've as you said, you've been flat out busy, but you are frantically writing. So when we first spoke about Orbs, in fact, why don't you describe Orbs for our viewers?
Okay, so you can see this lovely character leering over my shoulder here. Put him there on purpose. So just to kind of, I suppose, introduce everyone to how he came to being is it was actually back in, I think it was 2009. I had one of these very strange dreams. So it woke me up about, it's a complete cliche, I know, but it woke me up about 3 a.m. one morning, and I've always been a creative type. So I was my trade was graphic design. Fresh out of school, so I was a graphic designer. Loved everything about art, so I was quite a creative person, and I loved literature as well. And I woke up, say, 3 a.m, and basically this dream, it just was so clear in my head, I had to write it down. It's not something I always did, but I had to write this down. So I wrote down almost like just at 3 a.m, a page just describing what the dream had been. And from that, basically, sprung this character. So Orbs, this particular little chappy here, he actually sprang into life. And from that point where the dream had occurred, that actually then obviously exploded this entire world, with different characters, and it started to develop thereafter. But actually, the dream itself does form one of a chapter in the book. So a part of that chapter is actually exactly what I saw in my dream, which I wanted to put in there. It's quite a nice little kind of homage to the inspiration that drove the story forward. But yeah, Orbs himself. So he is he's what as described, he's a little kind of short green forest gnome. He resides in the Cherryberry Forest, which it kind of lies on the borders of the town of Bric-a-Brac. So it's kind of set in a magical world, and Orbs is the kind of protagonist within the story.
So you've taken on a genre that is quite well padded and full of competition, but I mean, Orbs stands, like, I know I'm biased, obviously, but Orbs stands alone because you've not actually got a lot of the cliches in there. You've not, cherry picked from all of the other bits and just thought, right, okay, I'll pull the best bits out of the others and create something from that. You've actually created something that is entirely different. But it's excuse me, with all of these sort of books, you've done what Tolkien, what Rowling have done, is also captured the adult audience as well as children. So it's a book, and I'm always fascinated that adults take hold of what is essentially a book aimed at sort of 9 to 12 maybe.
Yeah, so it's that kind of middle grade audience. But for me, I find that I personally quite enjoy reading. That younger group, let's say. I think it kind of almost sometimes for me can kind of conjure that kind of that child within. Yeah. And I certainly wanted to really not just aim it at the kids, but at the adults as well. So the way I like to think of it is, throughout the book there are, obviously it's a story for children, for middle grade, but basically there are some very nice little pieces in there that kind of obviously may travel over the kids' heads, but it certainly will, the adults will pick it up and enjoy the story for those moments as well. So that's something I really wanted to try and work. It's
like Disney in that respect, isn't it? We all watch Disney movies with our kids, and we see all of the jokes that the kids straight over their heads, but we get even down to Bob the Builder. There was a lot of stuff going on in there that the kids never got, but there was some deep stuff in there.
I mean, one thing, because I've got 2 children myself, and one thing I always quite liked, because I certainly had my parents and an uncle of mine as well used to read us stories, and that was always a lovely time for us, because they'd read us these fantastic stories at night time, and you'd have these magical, I suppose your imagination would run riot. And I suppose for me, that's something I wanted to do with my kids as well. So that was a bit of a kind of catalyst for wanting to do that, because again, I had visions of people reading Orbs to their children, and I have had parents come to me and say this is what they've done, and it's enjoyment for both of them then. So they're reading the kid the story at bedtime, and the adult can enjoy it just as much as the child. So yeah, that was something I did pay quite a bit of attention to and want to make work, if that makes sense. So I
think it's really important. I mean, I read the whole of the Potter series to my kids when they were very small, and we made a point of not seeing the movie until we'd read the book.
A wise choice.
Yep. Neither of my children read, and they, which I'm quite ashamed to say, but as children they did. And then as they sort of went into their teens, as boys often do, they kind of went off and did their own thing. But both of them said quite categorically that the books were far better than the movies. Although they enjoyed the action and the way it was brought out, that these stories were better in written form. And I think if you can capture that with your child, and you read that to them, and you bring it out, and you give them that passion. Even now, I mean, my kids are in their 20s, and if we talk about it, we talk about the movies of the people that haven't seen them, they'll always say the books are better.
I mean, for me, I think you obviously always get. Sorry, what was that last bit?
It's having your own imagination to draw from.
That for me is what. This is one of the reasons I write, and again, for me as a kid growing up, I read like C.S. Lewis, I read Tolkien, Roald Dahl, so all of these kind of books, and for me, one thing I absolutely loved was using my imagination. And I'd read the stories, and then I'd try and actually kind of maybe draw because I loved art, and I'd try and draw the pictures myself as to what I saw a character as. So if I read Tolkien, I'd try and draw Gollum, you know, and it was how I saw him, you know. I mean, there'd be these fantastic paintings done by professionals, but it was how I saw him that, you know, that was my version of. And it's a similar thing for me, you know, which is the beauty of books, is A, you get the additional detail that you don't get in the films. And B, obviously, you know, it allows that child to, you know, work on their imagination, develop their own, you know, interpretation of the characters as well, which is great. That's the beauty of writing and reading. So,
well, I mean, we should say that you've actually incorporated both of your loves within the book, because not only have you designed Orbs, as we can see behind you there, that's one of yours, but there are your illustrations in the book as well, which kind of bring that out and bring it to life. I know you were a little bit reluctant to do it initially, and I twisted your arm.
You did
to do it, but I think it just adds. It just gives that, because not everybody and not every child has perhaps the same way of seeing things, and I think it just added that little bit. Plus, it gave you the chance to bring them to life as well.
Yeah, and that was a bit of a thing for me. I do recall. I mean, obviously, again, thinking about, for example, The Hobbit or some of the C.S. Lewis books, some of those were sometimes illustrated, and only a few throughout. And again, I remember the conversation. I was sat really on the fence, because part of me was thinking, well, I do want the kids to use their imagination, but I think we found the kind of the common ground in saying that, you know, it wouldn't be flooded with illustrations. I think in total there's about 5 or 6 throughout the entire book. But just where, for example, the child may need a little extra help and a little nudge through the door as to what that scene might look like, or that character, that's where we obviously were quite selective and chose where to sit the illustration. So again, if you've got the book, have a look through. But yeah, a lot of thought went into not just the actual designs, but actually where they were sat in the book as well. So yes.
Moves us into book 2, because this is actually a 6-book series, isn't it, Adam?
Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. As I say, book 2, well on the way. So, you know, I did want it to be out sooner than it was. But to be fair, life does sometimes get us in the way of us writers. So again, you can say it's excuses if you want, but COVID's, I've changed job during a lockdown, you know, homeschooling children, which was fun, to say the least. All while trying to kind of stay on top of, you know, writing as well. I'm sure most writers would agree that, you know, you do feel guilty. And for example, at the minute, you know, with my workload and stuff, how I've been trying to deal with it, I do feel like Orbs, bless him, is just on pause, and the rest of the characters are just kind of waiting for me to start again. But I am writing anyway, so book 2 is well on the way, and hopefully will be out very soon. So watch this space, everyone. You know, don't worry. I've not stopped. It is my mission. But yeah, it is part of a 6-book series. So the second one is well on the way. You know, I'm hoping to get that finalised and out as soon as possible. So
I mean, it's not, like you said, it's not easy. You know, everyone's got so many balls up in the air that you're trying not to drop something. Yeah. Are characters waking you up at night? Are they kind of in the back of your head, just sort of knocking?
It's strange. I mean, I've done kind of my plotting and stuff, so I'm obviously, you know, where I'm at. But you will sometimes get these moments that just suddenly you could be I don't know, in the middle of washing up, or you could be just and I'm sure other people get this as well, writers, creatives. Such a mundane task you could be doing, and all of a sudden something just hits you like a spark, and right there and then you'll have part of a chapter playing out in your head, and you can see it clear as day. Certainly I know this is me anyway, and I have to stop, and my wife, she'll kind of testify to this, that I have to stop and just kind of literally grab some paper, write down kind of how I'm visualizing things, and then that'll get fed into. So all over my office I've got like a folder with not just the actual main kind of manuscript, but literally full of notes and post-its and random bits of paper, even sometimes kitchen roll, where I've scribbled on kitchen roll and push that into the paperwork as well, you know. So it all kind of then comes together, so I just don't forget those particular moments, you know. And I will say that there are some great, fantastic, even in book 1, some little moments that just happen to just come to life on their own, and that worked so seamlessly into the rest of the story. It was just, it's strange how it works sometimes. It really is. But that's the beauty of it, is having these little moments where, you know, you could be walking down the street just holding hands with your child, and all of a sudden you get just a flash of inspiration, and, you know, you're away again. So, yeah.
So where have you drawn influence from for your characters?
It's a strange one. I mean, obviously, Orbs came purely from the dream. So that original dream back in, say, it was 2009, he literally flashed into my head there and then. And that is purely him. The rest of the characters, to be fair, they kind of, you pull, as a writer, you pull from your own inspirations and your own, I suppose, instances in life. So, you know, a lot of characters are driven by either, you know, events that I may have done, people I may have met or have known. You do kind of thrust parts of them into them. Certain characters. So one, for example, in book one, the actual father of this wizarding family, he's actually he's split into a few different people. So a portion of me's gone into him, but then certain elements of, say, my stepfather, he's gone in there as well. And, you know, you sometimes pull the best pieces of, you know, your inspiration and drive them together into those characters. You know, so, but it's strange because, like, I'd certainly say there's without sounding a bit weird, I've almost split myself into different kind of personalities. And I'd say that, like, another character, so Captain Shivers, as you may well know, he's a character in book one. He's kind of feisty, kind of dwarf captain, doesn't take, you know, any stick from anyone. And again, that's part of me goes into that. That's almost like the father version of me, you know. So when I'm imagining, you know, let's say telling my kids off for being naughty or something, that's the kind of character I suppose I see, you know, I apportion myself into that character, and how would I deal with that? And I suppose that's how I kind of develop my characters. The ones, obviously, you know, I sometimes do struggle with, and again, it's something when I do is actually the females, because I can't put myself into that perspective, I suppose, but I do lean on and I suppose, you know, I may ask questions to people that I know that, you know, oh, what would you do in this situation or scenario? But again, I do draw on, might be my mum, you know, I might draw, she goes into a part of a character, if that makes sense. So that's kind of how I develop the personalities. When it comes to names, I just love quirky names. So I go to town on these fantastic and wonderful names. It's one thing that, to be fair, a lot of people do quite enjoy with the book. It's not just the names of the creatures, the places, but also the people. So it's just something I've always enjoyed doing, is from a young age, is kind of creating weird and wacky and wonderful characters, really. So again, if you like that kind of thing, get the book.
So actually, now again, you segued me into these brilliantly. So thank you. Actually, some of the places, though, are based on real places.
Absolutely. So one thing I'm quite proud of and keen to do. So I was born in Nottingham, but I actually grew up, I'm a Lincolnshire lad. So I was born in Nottingham, but grew up, I think from about the age of 3, I moved to Lincolnshire and lived in various different places throughout. It's a great place to live. And not only are some fantastic names of places, but Lincolnshire did have its own dialect as well. So what I wanted to do in my book, to kind of almost champion Lincolnshire and kind of, I suppose, showcase the world, the kind of great place it is, not just for its kind of natural beauty and stuff, but the names of places, the language that, you know, it's an old dialect that they used to speak called Yellow Belly. So that I wanted to try and A, resurrect the dialect in the book, but B, also kind of name some of the fantastic places that there are. So one place that's named in the book is called Dogdyke. There's a whole history behind how that name came to be. So again, if you want to learn more about that, fantastic, buy the book, check it out. But a lot of the names and the streets in the town of Bric-a-Brac are actually from the street names in a town called Louth, which is it's a market town. Again, I went to school there and lived there for a while as well. But those actually, some of the names of the street names lended themselves really well to my, I suppose, my fantasy town, you know, in the book. So those have gone in there as well. And I was really keen to kind of do that because, again, when it goes, global and we're selling millions and the films are made, the whole world, in its entirety will know of these fantastic places. So it really will put, you know, Louth, Lincolnshire on the map. And as I say, I would think for me, it would be an absolute dream, and it'd be wonderful for example, this old dying dialect to be resurrected, because I'm using it almost as a variant of like a magical language. So, you know, when these wizards and witches and fantastic creatures are kind of casting spells and, you know, using this old language, it's actually using this old dialect, you see. So I really wanted to kind of get that into the book as well and try and keep it going, resurrect it. So again, blue sky thinking, but my dream would be, when the films are made, is that, you know, you'll have kids and adults alike kind of saying all these very quirky, funny, you know, old language kind of phrases and expressions. And I'll give you an example. So one that was my absolute favorite, and this was kind of my idea as to why to kind of go for it, is so it kind of originates from kind of old Scandinavian, and when they came across and, you know, I suppose entered into the UK and developed the language, and it kind of came from there. But a good example of yellow belly, or the Lincolnshire dialect, so a 30-runged ladder is called a thotty stabbersty. So those kind of things I just absolutely loved, and there's so many quirky and weird and wonderful you know, phrases and words to be used. So those again go into, you know, certain characters speak that language and that language only. It comes certainly into effect more in book 2 as well. So there'll be one character purely who his language is that language, because he's quite a bit older. But yeah, a lot of as the books progress, you'll see a bit more of this kind of language coming into play. So that's something, again, I really wanted to get in there. So,
and that's, I mean, that's taken a lot of research, hasn't it, in order to kind of bring it back?
Yeah. So again, it wasn't just a case of I knew of it, and to be fair, I've got an old family friend, and he's very Lincolnshire born and bred. I mean, you chop him in half and it says Lincolnshire like a stick of rock. But he's an absolute character himself, but he speaks that kind of way. So again, that was certainly something that always kind of caught my ear and had my attention. But I've looked, obviously researched a lot online and looked into a lot of the stuff. So people have given me books and, you know, dialects, you know, dictionaries and things like that. But I also got in touch with some kind of historians as well. So local historians. There's a lady locally who was trying her best again to try and obviously keep this going. And obviously, because it's a dying out, the language is dying out, which is such a shame. Because it is so fantastic, it will be a shame for it to be lost. So if I can try and in some way retain that and get other people speaking about it and finding it fun and interesting, then why not? If I can work it into this story, why not? So that was one of my missions, let's say that.
Brilliant. And then again, beautifully done there, Adam. The second part of your mission, so you donate part of the royalties from the book to a charity that is quite important to you. So do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so again, I suppose writing the books and doing the illustrations, coerced into doing the illustrations, shall I say, was that was always just that was me being selfish. That was kind of my creative outlet. Because I wasn't doing graphic design anymore, I needed something to kind of keep my creativity going and my imagination. So I love the writing, I love the illustrations and drawing and all that. So that was for me. However, I thought, you know, whilst I'm doing this, why can I not help people if I can? So obviously I've mentioned the dialect there. The other thing I wanted to do was to help developing countries and, you know, donate. So again, a portion of the, you know, the sales goes to UNICEF. So I was looking for different charities. Specifically, I wanted to basically make sure that all kids could have an education. That was something that was quite important to me. Here in the UK, we're all very fortunate, and basically, you know, we have these fantastic schools. I went to a grammar school and I thoroughly loved it. You know, I loved school. It was fantastic. Kids out there, you know, third world countries, for example, they don't have those opportunities. And the reason it's so close to my heart is I used to actually live in Kenya. So my father and my stepmom still live out there, but for a time, me, my siblings, we all lived out there. We went to school out there, to an international academy, which was amazing. One of the best experiences of my life. And I'm still in touch with a lot of the kids and from obviously when I was out there. So they're all spread across the world right now, but I stay in touch with them, which is fantastic. But yeah, seeing firsthand how harsh a third world country can be, it really does, it stays with you. As well as, so Kenya, it's fantastic. It's beautiful. You know, it's a natural wonder, Africa. It really does get under your skin. But there's the grim reality as well. Holidaying out there is one thing, but when you live it and you see children, you know, unable to get healthcare and dying, families starving because it may have been a drought and there's no rain, so the crops fail. That's reality, and we are sometimes blinded by it in our own living conditions. We forget about stuff like this. That for me will never go away. So it's something that's very close to my heart. And for me, even if I only sold 20 copies, it meant that I could give something to them, you know. So, I mean, for anyone watching, we want to sell 7 million copies and have the films made. So make sure you go out and buy a copy, because for me, the message is that, you know, the price of the book, you know, it's a case of, if you buy this book, you're getting something anyway. You can enjoy a fantastic story, but you're actually also donating to a good cause. So it means that a kid will have an education, they will have clean water, they'll be able to eat, they'll have, you know, the medication that they need. And that's what UNICEF stands for. Originally, I was looking for kind of just charities that dealt with education, because my message is clear that I didn't want any kid to not enjoy the magic of stories. You know, I wanted kids to be able to have that, you know, if they're in a war-torn country with all this horrible stuff going on, at least they could almost take themselves out of it and go to another place by reading a book. So for me, every kid has the right to be able to enjoy stories. But when I actually researched and found out that UNICEF not only do obviously the disaster relief and obviously, you know, put meds and food and stuff everywhere, they actually do a fantastic lot of work with education and supporting that, and setting up schools and academies throughout these kind of third world countries. So as soon as I saw that, I was really on board. And as I say, it's there. So for anyone who does buy a copy, then obviously a portion of your expense does go to those third world countries in helping children who are less fortunate than ourselves. So yeah, that was very, very key to me as well. So that was mission number 2, which is still ongoing.
Brilliant. And I mean, you know, there is no better gift than you can give a child than escapism. I truly
Absolutely
believe. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I spent the majority of my childhood in libraries, reading everything that I could, and just simply falling in love with different places, different people, different experiences. And I know I travelled to places I'll never be able to travel to simply by opening a book.
Exactly. And for me, it's obviously there's the escapism element, so you can kind of lose yourself into another place, which is fantastic. So again, for me, this book, you know, you can go and visit these wonderful places and use your imagination, but kind of not just that. It's these kind of books, you know, you pick the right book, it gives you hope, you know. And again, for some of these horrendous conditions that these kids are having to live in, these kind of war-torn countries, you know, if I could think that not even just my book, but any book, you know, that were given to these kids, if it gave them that chance and that opportunity to not only kind of, you know, lose themselves in the magic and marvel of a story, it could maybe give them hope and also expand their horizons. Who knows? You know, they get the right book, it could drive them down a path that takes them outside of that world that they're in. So for me, all the way, definitely something I'm quite, I suppose, proud of. But you know, I'll always try and you know, focus my efforts on trying to achieve that and help where I can. So
the book basically deals with a lot of the things that children come across. So there's inner family arguments, there's misunderstandings, there's broken friendships, there's feelings of betrayal, there's hope, there's new friendships where you don't expect them, and of course there's a lot of magic and mystery and action in there. So there's a lot going on, but it's also, I think, the book certainly at the age that you've aimed it at, it kind of pulls together everything that they're probably going through and trying to understand, and puts it into a way that makes sense for them and gets them to understand how things happen and why they happen.
Yeah, I mean, when I was putting the book together, obviously there's the underlying story of, you know, it's set in a fantasy world. It's you know, it's very Harry Potter-esque. I hate saying that, but it's essentially, as I describe it to people, it is essentially like Harry Potter, but rather than being at school and focusing on the school element, it's more aimed at like family life. So what would it be like if we just followed Harry Potter and he was, you know, let's say, with his family who were also magical in a world which was magical, how would that look? So that was one thing I was kind of keen to kind of like, I suppose, delve into. So, you've got Orbs, who essentially meets this family, and it's kind of, he helps them through various trials and tribulations. So you've got a mother, father, and then a son and a daughter. And of course, we do deal with a lot of kind of modern day issues. And that was something I wanted to kind of really kind of, I suppose, link. So as maybe kids and even adults alike are reading these things, they can obviously relate to them. So we do deal with, sibling rivalry. We touch on even things like divorce rates, they are high. So things like that's kind of touched on within the book. Celebrity obsession, rather than thinking about, Justin Bieber, there's actually, one instance where, there's a kid and he's obsessed with this wizard who is, amazing. And, you can imagine pictures of the paintings, let's say, of the wizard on his walls, he's obsessed with him and because he's so powerful. So it was kind of like that. But obviously, so it's taking these modern day themes and obviously just putting it into that style, that genre, and that environment, and just seeing how it pans out. So again, it kind of sometimes makes it quite quirky and funny, and that, you're seeing it from a different spin, so rather than, a child being put on the naughty step, there might be, whizzed up to the room by a spell, or and things like that. That's the kind of thing that I wanted to see, and as I say, hopefully that's what I'll get some of the feedback from the readers, is that they were able to relate and understand kind of, I suppose, my angle that I was trying to come at. So
well, I think we've covered everything, apart from the fact that we don't have book 2 yet, Adam, so you need to get cracking. So
absolutely, yeah.
If anybody wants to buy a copy, Orbs and the Attack of the Hair Spiders, it is available in all good bookstores. It's available online. We have copies if you wanted a copy signed from Adam. I think you can provide that as well.
So, yeah, and to be fair, one thing I will do as well is, once lockdown, so I did actually hit a few schools before, I was doing a bit of a tour, so starting Lincolnshire and obviously, expanding out. But I've managed to get to a few schools, which went down fantastically. Once, obviously, we're out of lockdown and the world is back to normal, just keep an eye out for some new dates, because, as I say, I'll be attending various different places, schools, etc. Because, again, the big thing is obviously getting out and seeing kids. That's fantastic. So I can obviously attend schools. So that's something I'll be doing as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Adam, and get back to writing.
Yes, will do. I've got my pen ready now. Yeah, take care anyway, Taryn, and thanks very much for your time.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.